We
Okay, so
should focus on oh mate. Oh, sorry. Start now.
yeah, uh, okay, so good evening, everyone. So in this video, I'm going to try to break down everything in our code. I'm going to try to explain the essential components that make up everything in our program, right? So as you can see here, we are at the main.cpp file, right? So this is our main function, and we have here the method. We have here a method, right? And then try catch luck. And then as you can see, we have instantiated an object here called app inside in an inventory app, right? And then we call a method inside that object called run. So this method this is the main method actually that everything is being orchestrated into, right? All of these files that you see here, right, are no, they are compressed into this one single method, which is this is our program itself, right, in general. So here, this method right here, set console output cp, right, is just is actually just for um supporting our UI components, right, to be able to display all these colors and stuff. So this is the you need to configure this, right? And so I guess it's better if we move on to the inventory app first, right? So this is our inventory app, right? So this is the, as I've said earlier, this is where everything is being orchestrated, right? Everything is, this is where everything is called. So as you can see here, we have our run method here, right there.
Yes.
So we have here, we have int choice, right? We have a variable called choice and a string input choice. And sentinel false. So sentinel, this is just a identifier or identifier for our main loop, right? For no, when it when it should when it should stop, right? And right here we have console UI. So if you actually go to the declaration of this particular file, which is around here, right? So this is its declaration. So we can see here we have an inventory and a console UI. So that those two classes, no, they are embedded inside this inventory app. So meaning that we have they have their own like isolated object inside this app. So what does that mean? Well, it means that we can call or we can um, use these two objects inside our inventory app. So these two objects right here is just this one, right? This class inventory and these console UI.hvb. So these two files, they are what I call like the backbone of everything, right? The backbone of our program, because this console UI class here, this is responsible for everything, all the UI components that you see in the console. This is where it came from, right? So as you can see, we have here methods. We have here different methods actually. We have display menu UI, display add product UI, display remove product UI, inventory, and so on and so forth, right? So essentially, this is just for displaying the UI components in our console.
Dependency. Yeah.
And
It's
then
actually
yeah,
dependency. Yes.
oh,
Yes.
dependencies up. Oh, yeah. And then class inventory. So this is what I call right the this is where the interaction of your database is going to happen in this particular class, right? So if you actually see here, if you look closely, right, in the public part, all of these methods, right? We have here a method called add product. So what this does is essentially adds product to our database, right, to our file-based database. And then we have here as well a remove product, which is, remove product. And we also have a display inventory, which displays the inventory. And we have here search product by name, search product by ID, and so on and so forth. So I'm not going to be, jumping into the code this time, because it will be really, really, daunting. What I'm trying to do here is that I'm trying to introduce you guys to the architecture, or the structures of our program, rather, so that I
Focus
can easily,
on
you can easily wrap your head around with, you know, when I'm going to
the
explain the code later on. So,
Bologa.
all right. So, those two, right? This inventory and the console UI, the HTTP, think of this are, the backbones of our program. So, okay. So now here in our inventory app.hpp, right? I'm just going to go here in our code. So we actually have it. We call these, those classes really, really often in this file. Right, as you can see here, we have console UI. Um, as well as right here, we have console UI. We have inventory, console UI, inventory, console UI, inventory, console UI, right? Console UI. Here, inventory is passed on by reference, and then as here as well. And then yeah, console UI. So those two are, they're like the backbones really of our program. So um given now that that, right, that those are the backbone, now we're going to dive into this thing, and there's another thing called the input handler, right? As you might notice, right, this particular class is also present here as well, that often, as much as those two that I've said earlier, as the backbone of our program, right? So if you look at here, actually, so this is the input handler. Actually, it's not. Um, no. Let's go here. So this is our input handler class, right? So this is the declaration of it. So meaning this is everything that it has, right? It has the add product input handler, remove product input handler, search product input handler, update product input handler. So what this does is it handles everything in the user's end, right? Every inputs of the users, and when the user inputs some choices, when it inputs some whatever, right? Everything about input. This is where it all happens in there, right?
Everything
So
you can put. Yeah.
yeah, this is where everything is going. You know, this is this class is responsible for all of that. So
Yes.
if you look at here, it's implementation side. So this was its declaration side, right? Everything, by the way, everything in the include folder, right? This is our declaration. There are no codes in here, right? Just declaration, just straight up, you know, declaring everything, just like that, right? But if you go into source, this is where the implementation starts, right? This is where you see the code and the implementation itself, right? So here we implemented a method called the add product input handler, right? So we added some code here. So this is just typical code. So you see here we've instantiated a string input and string input price, and then we have few labels. Actually, we have the name, category, quantity, and price. right? So the reason for that is that, you know, the program can just go to this label instead of having a while loop, which is, I believe, is just more efficient and more understandable, right? For example, here we have another one here which just displays the name prompt, and then, you know, it gets the input for the user, and if the name is empty, right? If it is empty, then it goes to it, it throws an error first, right? It's in your console UI display empty field error name. So these two, we're going to dive into this later, but they're essentially just UIs which, displays something in the console, right? So right here we see, right, we go to name. So what this does, just gets back here, right? So if the name is empty, it gets back here again, and then it executes this part again and again and again, right? As long as, you know this thing is executed, right? And same goes here. If category is empty, then display an error in the console, right? So the main thing, actually, if you can actually see, if like the pattern here, everything that has the console UI, they're related to the console UI, right? The UI of our program. So whenever you see something like this, just think of them as, something that has to do with, inputting or like displaying UIs and everything, right? So here we also have quantity, so same goes as well. If string input quantity is empty, and then quantity, right? Go to quantity again, just same as everything, just, But this time we wrap it up with a try and catch luck, because, you know no, the reason why we wrap it with a try and catch luck is so we can, catch these exceptions and do something with our exceptions, right? For example, right here, right, first we displayed something in the input. Sorry, we displayed something in the console, and then we went back here again, right? And then if it throws an out of range exception, then it goes back here again, right? But, it displays the an exception first, but and then it goes back here again. So that's essentially what it's doing, really, just, kind of looping everything until it's done, right? Until there are no
Yeah.
errors in there. So same goes here as well. So essentially, all of these things, they revolve back into these, looping and everything, right? As you can see here as well, right? In our remove product input handler method, but in this case, just the ID, right? So right here, and then go to the ID again, right? Otherwise, console product removed successfully, or product with ID has been removed. So another method here, we have the search product input handler, right? And then input console, display generic, choose one, right? So this is essentially just typical um, input and handling same. Like, for example, here we have if choice is equals to one, right? If the user inputs one, then it goes into this black code, and then it executes it again, right? And then ID, try, get line, NC, and so on and so forth. And then here we have our inventory, right? So this inventory right here, this is being passed by reference. So what that means is that whatever is passed inside this function is just essentially just passing the address of that object. So we're not duplicating everything. So what that means is essentially just the inventory inside the inventory app.cpp right here. This inventory, right? This inventory right here, right
Yeah.
here, right here. Actually, if you can see, we actually pass it on here. It's just essentially the same as in here. So that's why we can just modify it. We can search product by ID and return if, if it's done, so that it won't continue again. No, I mean it won't continue to the rest of the code. Same goes here. If choice is 2, then print this out. Invalid choice, please enter 1 or 2, and then return. And then yeah, essentially just what it means, right? And then
Yeah.
everything just revolves back around into that what I've discussed earlier. It's just that it's just in the different for a different um method, right? For example, here with update product info. So everything is just essentially the same. Like right here, for example, we have label again, and then just go to again, and then error console UI, and then go to again, right? So just essentially that string input, go to, right? So just the same really. So you can see actually. So now if you're wondering, um
I'm
how do we
wondering.
update the inventory, right? All we just did is just, inputting the, users input, right? Choices and everything. So we actually do that by the inventory, right? As I've said earlier, inventory is the one, it is where, it handles the, the searching and the you know, the modifying and everything, right? So inventory is responsible for that. So actually, if you see here, we have it called a method here called the update stack, right? So when this is called, it now jumps a bit back into this inventory, right? Calling a function into the inventory. And same goes for everyone in here. Right here as well, we have inventory update product. This is actually under the update product input handler right here. And yeah, so just like that, that's essentially just it. So um, now let's move on to the inventory actually right here. So this is our inventory, right? This is where again I'm gonna repeat it. This is where the you know this is the class. This is the this is the class that you know manipulates our data or our database or file-based database right here. The not that. Sorry about that. Um, the inventory that right. So inventory.cpp. So if you can see here, we have a constructor, right? And we instantiate it with file path. So this variable is already been inside the class. So what we're doing is just instantiating the file path for it. So this file path, by the way, is the inventory file, right? That's from the name itself, inventory file name. So if you see here, if you actually go back to inventory after CVP, you can see here that we've instantiated inventory with this um file path, which is the path of our data, right? So that's why you know and then we have the product method. So what it does is it adds product to the inventory, right? And then notice here, right, we have another class. So this class is the file manager. So this file manager class is found here, right? So this class is where the actual direct manipulation of the database itself, right? From the name itself, file manager, right? So this is where it modifies um the inventory that our database, right, directly. So what do I mean by directly? Well, this is where we start using the file system I know, sorry, the upstream uh dependency. right? This is where the actual modifying of code begins, right? This is where the actual thing, the actual, writing of the file happens. So if you look at it here, let's get into its declaration file. So this is its declaration file, right? So class file manager, right? So we see here actually four methods. There we have read to inventory, write to inventory, delete from inventory, update inventory. So they're essentially just basic, what do you call that, prod operations for a database, right? If you remember or
Yes.
if you're
Uh,
familiar with it.
create,
Yeah, create, read, update,
read,
update and
update,
delete. Yeah,
delete. Yeah.
yeah. So these are the essential operations of a database in the file manager, right? So now let's get into its implementation. So we see here we have a read to inventory implementation of its method here, right? So what this does, it it reads to the inventory, meaning it essentially push back or essentially um returns a vector. So a vector is essentially an array. Think of a vector as an array, right? So what we're doing here
Yes.
is we're taking every single line inside this inventory dot right? We're taking every single line here. Like for example, this one line, right? There's another line and then another line and another, right? So what we're doing here is, where was that? What we're doing here is we're taking every line, right? We're taking every line and we're pushing it into the array, right? So let's get back into the inventory of that. So right here, this is gonna be in one array, one element of the array. This one's gonna be another element of the array, and this one's gonna be another element of the array, and this one's gonna be another element of the array. So that is essentially what it's doing here. Essentially, just yeah, and then it returns that inventory, that vector, right? That array, which is right here. This is return type, if you can see it. Std vector and std string. A vector type of string, right?
Yes.
And then here we have write to inventory. So from the name itself, or yeah, from the name itself, right? You can actually tell already what it does. It essentially writes to the inventory. So we have here the file name and the data, right? And it's what you call that? And it's parameter. So see here, so it's a and then out file there. Here it is. This is this is the line of code that is responsible for writing everything inside this folder. Sorry, this database right here. Out file and then data, just like that. And then it just prints everything that whatever we pass into this parameter. So later on, we will see, we will see how this is being, how this is being used in our program. So right now I'm just gonna explain it to you guys so you can have some greater idea or better, um, wide picture of our program. So here
Yes.
we have another method implementation here, which is from delete from inventory, right? Which deletes from inventory. So everything here is just deleting, right? So push
Delete.
back,
Pushing back.
something like that, and
Uy,
then
Kwan. Nawala na akong Kwan ka. Ako sa Miro.
no.
If,
So
umana sa
you could, so
explanation.
uh right. So we see here, right? we have we've typical just a typical thing, right? Instantiating a file path and then checking if it is open, and then displaying if it's open, displaying errors, and then here we have another new inventory. So string inline, both found false, and what this does is essentially taking the uh what do you call that? Taking the I know reprinting everything inside this inventory while ignoring the thing, while ignoring the line which has the same ID. So what that means is that what it does is essentially just copying this and then no, sorry, deleting this first, right? Deleting everything first and then pasting pasting everything as long as it is not the same as the ID that has been passed on, right? So let's say if the ID was this one, so when this is being repaced again, this one is gone, right? That one is not going to be painted, that's not going to be written inside here. And for example, if this ID is being passed, right, then copies in there and then it deletes and it will not repaint this back again. It just ignores that. So that's essentially what it means, right? Sorry, it's this is essentially what it does. And then same goes here. The inventory, just you know, new inventory and stuff like that, right?
Nag-record ka, go.
Oh,
Oh,
and then and then
yes.
it's that. So yeah, so this so that is everything about the file manager, right? So now let's jump again. Let's jump back into inventory. So here, yeah, we see add product, right? So which is no add product to the inventory. We see here actually file manager being called, right? And then as well as here, as well as not here, not here, again, but here, right? So this is being used so much in this file here. Let's see, in there, and yeah. So now that you know, right, what that file manager, I'm not gonna be explaining so much of that. So everything is gonna be abstracted now, right? But as you notice, right, we have a product class here, and this product class is, it is actually a core class, right? So if you look at here, in the core, like so, right, we have here the um it's a declaration, right? It's a declaration class, right? So this is everything about it. This is all its methods. So we have the constructor, we have display, we have the get ID, get name, get category, quantity, get price, name, and so on and so forth, right? Essentially just typical get and setters method just to get all these methods and encapsulation. So this being encapsulated, then these methods right here, the getters and setters, are the only way of getting all these values here. So if you go into product CVP, so this is an implementation file. You can see it's really basic, right? Just instantiating a default value, right? If uh, if there are no arguments in the constructor, it it instantiate a default value, and then here Now it sets all of those values whenever there is a parameter, right? There's a parameterized function. Sorry, there's a parameterized constructor, right? And then here we have valid display, right? Just essentially just the implementation of it, really. So we see a get price, it returns the price, and so on and so forth. Now let's get back to the inventory. So this is actually this serves as the rather the blueprint of our product, right? So as you can see here, we instantiated it, and then we set this ID, set this name, and so on and so forth. And then we stored it inside a map with its random ID, and then the product, that product that we just created. So these products, this is actually a map inside the inventory, right? If we go to the inventory again in the inventory declaration, we will see there here, right? We instantiated that alongside with this file name, right? So that's it. That's the map. That's a map, right? So a map is essentially just think of it like a dictionary. It's like an object, uh, key value pairs, right? It stores data in key value pairs. In this case here, we stored it with its key, its random ID as its key, and it in the product as the value, right? So the random ID is the key, and the product is the value. And then just typical write to inventory, which just write to the inventory, and then we write in it something like that, right? And removing product right here, we see another function here. Which just removes, deletes from inventory, right? So here we see it deletes first to the product map, right? Inside the product map, it deletes it. It just essentially just erase it completely, and then we delete it in the original file. And then another one here, we have display inventory, which is load inventory, which just loads everything, right? What do we mean by loading everything? Well, what actually let's just go into its method here. So this is what it does really, the load inventory. So what it does is it takes everything here, all of this, and then we are um loading it into the products. We're essentially saving everything into the products map. Right, so it takes everything here, all of this, sorry, all of this data, and then storing it inside here. Which so that then we can do something with it instead of manually going into the file, right? The file manager, write, read, and something like that. What we just did here is just taking everything inside here and then just put it inside a map and then use that map to access everything, like we did here, for example, in the search product, right? Or maybe where was this? Or in the display inventory, right? So we load the inventory, and then we just loop inside the map, and then just display them. By the way, this display method is also inside the product CVP, which is this one, display, and then it just prints out everything, right? It just prints out everything, and that's basically actually what it's doing. Per that second here is essentially referring to the value. First, if we say something like per dot first, that is referring to the random ID, which is this one right here. It's key. But if we say per dot second, this is referring to this one, which is its value. And then that display, which is inside here, inside this object, right? So it calls that to display inside the console. and then search product by name, right? So essentially just search this product by name. So I'm not going to be, you know, I'm just going to be abstracting everything really for that. But I've actually did, if you can recall, I did actually shared some insights or how this is done, right? So remember what I said that in the file manager, this reads inventory thing right here, right? This returns a vector string of every single line here. For every single line here, right? For every single line here, it returns that as an array. This array is already implemented right here. So we call this, and this return an std vector string, a std vector of string, which is the product lines. And then we created another search products here. We created another map rather, and then we loop into that product lines right here. Basically, we loop every single one of them. We're taking every single line here, every single line here, every single line here, and we are doing something in each of those lines, right? For example, here we took all the fields and we split it into commas. So what it does is it splits everything into whatever is in here, right? Before any commas, they separate them, and then after they separated them, they store it inside this vector of string, right? So now all of this field, sorry, each of this field is now a vector element, right? So remember that vector essentially is an array, right? Think of vector as an array. So each of them now is going to be an element of the array. So this is going to be a zero element of the array. It's going to be the second element of the array. It's going to be the third element of the array, fourth element, and fifth element, so on and so forth. So, and if you look here in its preceding lines, right, we said something like it fields one that find name, which is essentially just what we're trying to find, right? We're trying to search. So we're finding the name, and if it exists, right, then we in place, or we add to the map that we've just made here. We add that to the map right here, right? What it's saying is that if it exists, right, if there is a name similar to that name here inside the database, then you know it um it puts it inside the map, which is this one right here, inside the map. So here fields 0, which is the ID, right? Field 0, which is referring to this one. This is the field 0. And product. So this essentially just what do you call this? Essentially just instantiating a product. It instantiates a product upon instantiating something upon inserting it into the map. Right, that's why we use this in place method instead of the pushback method. Because if we use the pushback methods, then it wouldn't be able to instantiate this. So that would be an error. So next, after we've you know after we've searched and then we've split it, we then loop into each of those in the map, right? That we've just you know we've looped into the map, and then we're displaying each of them, right? So if ever we found something here that will be stored inside the search products map, and then we're gonna loop into the search product map, and each of those maps we're gonna display them right here, right? So that is essentially what we're saying. So if we found, let's say we found two, right? So it will display two of them, just loops and everything, right? And then we say something like here, right? Error console display error product not found. We displayed an error if none of these are you met. So and then we have here the search product by ID. So sorry, excuse me. So again, we loot inventory. So loot inventory is essentially just taking everything from here and then storing it inside these sorry, not the one, these products, this right here, right? Taking everything in here and looting it in here. That's what it's doing. That's why it's doing the load inventory, right? So where is that? So here again, we have load inventory, and then we loop into each of them in the products, right? Inside the product, and then if paired at first, which is referring to the ID, right? The second one, the second is referring to the value. The first paired at first is referring to the key, which is the random ID right here, right? Because that is stored in a dictionary like manner, or like a object or a key value pair. And then we just display them, right? If we found something, right? If we search about ID, right? If we found this ID inside these products, then we're going to display them. So that's essentially just how easy it is. So we just loop into these products, and if we found something that matches with the ID of this, then we just display them. So that's essentially just it. And then error console if you're not, if that's not met. And then here we have the update product. So yeah, but essentially just updates product. So again, we load the inventory, and then we did some looping again. This is actually a for loop, right? By the way, if you don't know, this is a for loop. But I guess you just get it. And then if paired at first is equals to ID, then pair at second is set name. So what this is doing is it is updating the product, our product, right? So it is looping each of every one of these products in here, right? Each and every one of these products in here. It is looping each and every one of them, and then if we find a matching ID, right? We are going to then set its name to whatever is in here, because note that we're updating our product here, right? Date product, such as its method name, right? And its categories, it is category again, and it is quantity and its price. So again, we find this file manager uh, class, and it just updates inventory final, which is essentially takes whatever is in this ID and just find it in here and then replace everything in there. That's essentially what we're saying. We discussed that earlier, right? And then here we displayed a success message called product update successfully. So, and then otherwise product not found with ID. So essentially just what it means. And then we have the update stock. So this method is essentially just modifying the quantity of our products in our inventory. So what that means is that if I would no add a stock, right, from just from the name itself, adding a stock, which is add some quantity, another quantity, right, incrementing the quantity, or yeah, just incrementing the quantity in general, right? That's why it means say stocking or stuck in or stuck out. So update stock, right? So looting the inventory first, and then we take we're finding the ID of whatever is present here, and then if ID does end, which if which means that if it does not exist, then product not found with ID, and then here we create a reference of that second product of that product, right? And then we took the current quantity, product the current quantity with the current product, and then the new quantity, which is adding that into the current quantity. And then if quantity is less than zero and new quantity is less than zero, which essentially just means that if the quantity, if the quantity is already zero, which means that it's already zero right here, it's quantity, then, let's say for example, it's already zero, right? And then, let's say this is defined then, and then you are trying to stack out, which, which would cause into negative value, right? You cannot stack out something that is already zero because it didn't exist. So that would essentially just turns out to be an error, right? So if new quantity is negative or less than zero, right? So you cannot do that, right? Insufficient stock for product. Current stock attempting to detect return, something like that. And then we have the product set quantity, which is just sets the quantity of the product. And then file manager, update inventory, right? Just more, what do you call that? It's just, um, sorry, signifying or something like indicating that it is being updated. And then loot inventory, we discussed this already. And then inventory value, which is just the quantity sum of the product's quantity and times the sum of the product's quantity multiplied by its price. That's what inventory value is. So I guess really those are the main, I would say, like the essential components of our program. And all this and here in this console UI thing, this is essentially just I would say just the spices, right? They didn't really add up to the functionality, but add they definitely add up into the aesthetic value, right? To the eye of the right, yeah, from the eye, right? From how it look. But these are essentially just um this everything inside the UI is just deals with the um do you call that? It deals with the what displaying, right, in the console. So remember that I said something that console UI is one of the backbones, right, alongside inventory. This is actually the reason why. If you see here, most of everything that that you will see um in the console is essentially right here. Right, we have the menu. Let's have the menu here. We have the product UI. We have the remove product UI, inventory UI, search product UI, exiting the system, right? And this is actually this is for displaying the inventory, right? So I use ANSI here, right? ANSI is, by the way, if you don't know, ANSI is this right here. This ANSI. This is where it came from. So these are the this is where we store all the codes, right? All the ANSI codes that corresponds to its respective colors, right? For example, we're green, cyan, blue, yellow. So this is just essentially just a set of variables, right? Just take the global variables. So we go here, right? We have, yeah, we have ANSI everywhere you can see because, it is, our program is really colorized. So you can, that's because the reason of the ANSI colors or the ANSI codes. We use ANSI codes for that. And some formatting, right? You can see here, formatting, everything, set W, with this, just essentially just, trying to set everything if it fits and say in the console, everything like that, right? So that is the console UI, really nothing much to deep dive into that. Just essentially just the design of everything. But I guess this something, right? So this slow print here, right? We have this is slow print function. Maybe this is something that is quite, I would say, um, complicated in this particular class. So what this does is essentially saying, actually, what this does is essentially printing in a way that it processes in certain kind of delay, so which gives the illusion of typing slow printing. But what essentially is doing is just posting every milliseconds, right, before it prints, and then just kind of have the illusion of writing slowly, but just essentially just sleeping for milliseconds. Right here, you can see. So actually, let's actually see that in action, right? So if you would make this file, or you would build this file, and then say something like build or build, right? And then I see that thing right there, just like kind of writing. That is what it actually is doing. This function is responsible for that, right? So next is we have the error console is just responsible for displaying the errors, like what you see here. Category cannot be empty. So this usually came from something around here. Negative error right here. Display the field cannot be empty. Please enter a value. Cannot be empty. Please enter a value. And then if you see here, right, this is a display error method. So what this does is just essentially dynamically placing folders into messages depending of its level right here. So we've discussed pretty much almost everything, really, all the essentials of the program, right? So essentially, all those are just the things that you're gonna need to know in order for you to understand deeper into this um, program, right? So this is the inventory app, right? And whatever is in there, you can essentially just understand it because you've known those essential components that made up this program. So it's just essentially just taking the choice, and if it is one, it does this. Input handler, it calls the console UI, right? Right, something like that. So and then again, case two, console UI, remove product. So now that we know, right, what console UI input handler inventory is, so now you can essentially just, wrap your head around all of this. If case four, then console UI that displays search product, input handler search product UI inventory. So if case five is the string ID name category quantity, and then stuff like that, right? So that's basically all it, right? That's essentially the main thing of this program. All right. And then we call that inventory app here. and then we run it, and then that's all really. So I think I have covered everything that is needed here, and thank you so much for listening, and God bless everyone.